Discover the Temple of Edfu, hidden for centuries beneath the sands of the desert. It unveils myths, rituals, and secrets of ancient Egypt. Explore the grandeur of this sanctuary dedicated to Horus. In the region known as Upper Egypt, near the west bank of the Nile River, between the cities of Luxor and Aswan, lies one of the most impressive and best-preserved temples of ancient Egypt, the majestic Temple of Edfu. It is one of the largest temples in Egypt, dedicated to the god Horus, the falcon who protected the pharaohs. The construction of the temple began in 237 BC, during the Ptolemaic period. It took nearly 2 centuries to be completed. Each stone carries not only the weight of history but also the union between Egyptian culture and the Greek influence of the time. By the standards of that era, the Temple of Edfu held great political and religious importance. The temple was built in honor of Horus, god of the sky, kingship, and protection. The mythical battle between Horus and Seth is recorded in bas-reliefs on the temple walls, symbolizing the eternal struggle between order and chaos. According to tradition, rituals reenacting this battle were performed in the temple. It served as a center of worship and sacred festivals. Upon passing through the monumental entrance of the temple, one encounters a vast open courtyard, surrounded by towering columns. Moving further inside lies the hypostyle hall, filled with symbols and inscriptions. Among the highlights of the construction are the grandeur of the main courtyard, the massive columns, and the gateway, which at 36 meters high is one of the tallest in Egypt. Speaking of the main courtyard, it is worth noting that Egyptian temples usually have only one courtyard. However, the Temple of Edfu features 2, the main one and a smaller, older courtyard that once belonged to a previous temple. The facade depicts Horus triumphing over his enemies. Among the spaces inside the temple is a chapel that once housed the sacred bark of Horus. Although the original has disappeared, a granite replica remains. The bark was used in ritual processions. In the city of Edfu, the Festival of the Divine Union takes place, during which the sacred bark of Horus is carried in procession to meet that of Hathor, accompanied by popular celebrations. The richness of the temple goes far beyond its physical structure. It lies in its meaning and is recorded on its walls through hieroglyphic inscriptions in bas-relief. By way of analogy, what today would be an online encyclopedia, stored in digital media, and in the past was recorded on paper, could, in a sense, be said to have been inscribed on the walls of temples and other monuments by the ancient Egyptians. Just as it is recorded on the walls of the Temple of Edfu, where what would be the pages of books take the form of stone. Thousands of hieroglyphs contain information about religion and astronomy, recording myths, rituals, astronomical observations, and even details of the religious life of ancient Egypt, making the Temple of Edfu one of the greatest sources of knowledge of that civilization. In addition, the temple housed a library that stored papyri with sacred texts, rituals, and astronomical information. This library no longer exists, but the titles and the quantities of manuscripts once stored there are inscribed on the temple walls. The Edfu experience is like a form of magic, where every detail offers a sense of wonder and a journey back in time. It is worth highlighting some curiosities. The Temple of Edfu is considered the best-preserved ancient Egyptian temple. For centuries, it remained buried under more than 12 meters of desert sand, with nature itself responsible for its preservation. It was only in the 19th century that archaeologists rediscovered this sacred structure. It is also fascinating to note the Greco-Egyptian cultural blend, which ranges from the worship of deities to architectural and decorative styles. The temple is dedicated to an Egyptian deity, but it was built during the period when Egypt was under Greek rule. This demonstrates the influence that Egyptian culture had on other peoples. The Greeks, for example, not only admired the Egyptians but also drew heavily from that source to build part of their own cultural foundation. Here, we can see Ptolemy as a pharaoh of Egypt. A curious fact about the Temple of Edfu is that while most Egyptian temples have lost their roofs over the centuries, the one at Edfu remains practically intact. This detail allows for an even more immersive experience, as visitors will have the opportunity to perceive the light and the environment in a reality very similar to what it was like in antiquity. Furthermore, the preservation of the roof is crucial for protecting the engravings and inscriptions on the walls. Another curious fact is that the temple walls function as a calendar, which presents the sequence of religious events. This demonstrates the relevance of the Temple of Edfu in the community life of the ancient Egyptians. The horse-drawn carriages of Edfu are, on their own, a unique experience. Since the temple is accessed from the Nile River, immediately after disembarking, visitors are greeted by locals who offer the traditional transport to the Temple of Edfu. The journey is made in animal-drawn carriages, driven by coachmen who wear traditional costumes, evoking the atmosphere of ancient times. On the trip to the temple, which is about 1 kilometer long, the carriage sways from side to side as it passes through narrow streets, to the sound of the horse's hooves. Thus, the journey in the carriages provides an opportunity to connect with the local culture, which adds a special touch to the travel experience. The feeling you get is that you're in a village that has been frozen in time, many years ago. When you observe the entire surrounding environment, the physical condition and attitudes of the coachmen in a climate of fierce competition to get customers, you realize you're in a scene of extreme poverty. As Arabs are generally excellent merchants, it is wise for visitors to agree on the price of the transport beforehand. Even so, the coachmen will do everything they can to bargain for a higher price than what was agreed upon. For example, the simple fact that a tourist accepts the reins for a few moments is already a reason for the coachman to demand an additional fee at the end. Currently, the Temple of Edfu is one of the most fascinating stops on Nile cruises. Visiting this temple is like taking a true journey through time, connecting the present to the splendor of ancient Egypt. It's no coincidence that it is one of the most visited temples during Nile journeys, combining historical, religious, and tourist value into an unforgettable experience. In conclusion, visiting the Temple of Edfu is much more than just seeing an architectural monument. It's an opportunity to experience the times of the pharaohs, their beliefs, and their myths. It's about standing before the mystery that surrounds every detail, whether in front of the imposing columns or the walls filled with inscriptions that continue to fascinate the world to this day. Beyond being millennia-old stones, the Temple of Edfu represents a legacy that has endured for centuries to remind us of the grandeur and spirituality of one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history. After the rediscovery of the Temple of Edfu, which was buried under sand, one can only wonder how many other monuments and fragments of ancient history might still be buried, waiting to be rediscovered. We'll end here for now, until our next travel experience. Well.